So the game I'm going to be reviewing right now is a game called Beast Wrestler, or as it's known in Japan, Beast Warriors. Did you ever have a game which as a kid you played so much it was a bit of an obsession? Maybe it delivered just the right cocktail of things you were into at that precise moment in time. It was almost as if it felt it had been made just for you. Well, as a youngster, this is how I felt about Beast Wrestler. I was massively into wrestling of the WWF, now WWE variety, but I was also big into monster movies, so combine grappling with a creature feature, and how can it be anything other than awesome? Load up the game and let it do its introduction, and you'll be greeted by the sight of all manner of cool looking beasts, and what I can best describe as some 16-bit foreboding Phantom of the Opera style music, which really sets the scene. Hats off to the developers here, they really did know how to get people pumped. Apparently the game was made by a company called Riot. Information on them appears to be rather limited, but it turns out that Riot was a subsidiary of Telnet Japan. It came into existence in 1991 when Telnet Japan was expanding, but when Telnet started to lose sales in 1993 it was closed, with some of its staff being transferred. It was best known for employing graphic artist and later director Eiji Kikuchi, probably saying his name wrong, and music composer Michiko Naruk. The game was published by Renovation Products, which was basically Telnet Japan's US publisher of Sega Megadrive games. Telnet would later go on to be purchased by Sega themselves, which is rather fitting seeing as they had heavily supported the Megadrive and they only ever released one SNES game. So if monsters and such, you might think that this game is set in the past. Well no, according to the Japanese manual, this game is set in 2020, so 2 years from now. But heck, when this game came out in 1991, the year 2020 probably felt pretty darn space age. And basically, well, it's about genetic engineering. Genetic engineering has allowed scientists to develop specific life forms called dragon warriors, and basically trainers have used these creatures to fight in a wrestling championship. So ladies and gentlemen, I guess you have 2 years to save up your cash and decide what kind of monster you'd like to own. This is one of those games where if you grab the American version, there's some absolutely fantastic English. There are plenty of words pushed together, missing adequate spacing, and some excellent typos which manage to slip through the translation process. In fact, before you fight your first fight, you'll be called a bovis when offered your first monster. If you're a lover of funny English, then this game is one to keep an eye out, that's for sure. The visuals in Beast Wrestler are very mixed in my opinion. I find the monster designs to be very interesting. They're reasonably detailed and there's a fairly good variety of them, and I think that they show a great deal of creativity. It's kind of from here that things get worse though. The arena is plain, it lacks any real care or attention. You probably noticed I said arena, not arenas. That's right, there's only one, so you better get used to looking at the same backdrop as you play. I'm also sad to report that the graphics look even worse in motion than they do in static screenshots. This is because the animation on the whole is pretty darn stiff, and could seriously do with the frames of animation being doubled. It looks odd and well janky. It feels like someone took a lot of time to make the beasts and then they were just poorly put into the game. The music in Beast Wrestler is far more consistent than the graphics though, and more importantly, it is in my humble opinion pretty darn great. It has a fitting orchestra meets 16-bit sort of feel, and it really feels like most of the Mega Drive sound capabilities were used here. It really does help the game to try and create a dramatic atmosphere. The sound effects though, well, I kind of think they're a mixed bag. The hitting noises are not too bad, and the noise when the beast hits the ground offers a nice satisfying feel, but the noise used when one monster bear hugs or chokes another is pretty grating, and all of the monsters roar the same when they're beaten. When it comes to gameplay, Beast Wrestler is once again a mixed bag. You move your monster wrestler around with the D-pad, with the A button being used to punch, the B button used for tail-based strikes, and the C button being used for your special signature move. The idea is to beat your opponent's monster till it cries out on the ground 3 times. Once you've managed this, you've won the fight. In order to do this, you need to cause damage to your opponent's monster, and you do this by punching, tail whipping, body slamming, clotheslining the living heck out of your opponent. In total honesty though, it is a bit of a button masher. It never feels quite like what you want is happening when you want it to. The game has 2 modes, match and tournament. Match mode is basically your versus or exhibit mode, and in this either 2 players can go head to head with 10 selectable beasts, or 1 player can fight a computer controlled beast. This is basically good either for just practicing or having a quick go with a buddy. Now tournament mode is the real game, this is the story mode. Here you use a pre-chosen creature and fight battle after battle. The game has 3 acts: the Protest, Domestic Rank and World Rank. You don't have to finish the whole game in one sitting as passwords are provided, but they're pretty long, so that's worth bearing in mind. After every other match you win, you get the chance to spend some of your winnings. You can use these to get various items and serums that can help raise your monster's speed, strength or stamina. At certain points you'll also be forced to merge your beast with a choice of monsters you've already defeated, being told that your monster's badly injured and without merging it, its life will be at risk. I think this is part of what really gripped me back as a kid, and something I don't remember experiencing a game before, and I wouldn't experience again until I played Monster Rancher on the PS1, which is a game I would strongly recommend even if it can be incredibly pricey. Okay, so despite loving this game as a kid, it's time to let rip now. The game has a lot of issues, the first being that the grappling and damage systems seem unreliable. A lot of the time who wins a grapple seems to be really random. You try to pound the buttons or press them at certain times and nothing seems to quite help your situation. The outcome seems to be out of your control. Apparently the American instruction booklet states that timing is the key, but in all honesty, if there's some kind of proper way to time things, I've never worked it out. Weirdly, your character can face in 6 different directions but can only attack in 2 of those directions. There's no block and no real dodge, so there's not really anything you can do defensively much. Add to this that the hit detection seems to be a real mess. When you're fighting the big upright monsters, punches and tail whips hit well enough, but don't work very well when you're fighting against short enemies. Sometimes it looks like your blows really shouldn't be connecting, and yet somehow they are. Soon you'll find that you're kind of managing to get around this, but it's not because you've learned how to play the game, it's more like you've learned a little bit of the game's broken logic. Okay, so it's a little bit hard giving this game a rating, as it was a pretty big part of my childhood. It was a game I invested a lot of time on, and yet I want to be totally honest, this game's a real mess, and for that reason I need to give it 3 out of 10. I don't think the game is without merit. There is in fact a lot of things I like about the game, but it really feels like it needed a lot more work for it to be a good game. If you want to try the game, well, it never came out in Europe, and American copies very rarely seem to go up for sale, so really you'll probably be stuck with the Japanese version, and the prices are all over the place for it. I've seen fully boxed versions go for around £13, but some people seem to want a heck of a lot more than that for it. Really, I wouldn't worry that much. There's much better things you can spend your cash on. Thank you very much for listening.